Welcome back, my lovelies. It's Miss Toni, and you're joining me on week 37 of my 40-year-old pregnancy journey. So this week I had my OB appointment, and Kelvin finally got to come. So I got a comment. Someone was asking, well, why hasn't he been at all the appointments? Because of COVID. So my doctor and my hospital have a strict policy where you can't bring anybody to your appointment. So he came to my very first one months ago when I first got the confirmation that I was pregnant. And then he wasn't allowed to come until now. It was supposed to be my week 36 appointment. It ended up being my week 37 appointment because my doctor had to reschedule. So all those weeks I was going alone, and in the past he actually attended every single one of my appointments. So it's a different feeling, you know, when you're going alone, when you're used to having your significant other there with you the whole time, just to hold your hand, just to support you, just to be there to get updates with you. And so I was so excited that he was able to finally come. So how y'all like my braids? I told y'all I was going to be getting braids because that's what I do at the end of my pregnancies. I don't have the time, the patience, or even the desire to touch my head when I get this close to delivery and then the next couple months. Like, who wants to think about doing their hair? For me, it's like, okay, I want something quick and easy that I don't have to maintain, something that's going to be off my neck. So at night I just wrap it on up and put on a bonnet so that I'm not hot, because these are sweaty nights lately. Sweaty nights and restless nights because I keep getting up having to pee over and over and over again. The other night I think I counted 4 times. And I think I'm rubbing off on Calvin because I try to get out quietly, but I got some pounds on me now. And so he hears me and then I end up waking him up and I just feel terrible. But you know what? This is the point when I guess your body is just like, okay, yes, the baby's heavy and it's on your bladder and that's why you peeing, but you also got to get used to that no sleep phase that's right around the corner. So I guess it's just getting both of us ready. So shout out to Angie for doing my braids. She did a really good job. She's a really sweet girl. It's my first time using her and I love her work. So these are goddess braids, which is really just the box braids with the curls. You get the curly hair for the end. So I hope y'all like it. So I mentioned I had my OB appointment. Kelvin was there. He was able to say what's up to my doctor. He was able to ask questions, which he always has really good questions. His main question was, when are we having this baby? And she definitely agreed with my perinatologist and she wanted to induce. And so I was so ecstatic because remember I told you guys in a couple of videos ago, I didn't want to be put in a position where she didn't agree with my perinatologist and then the pressure was on me to make that decision. And I asked her, I said, well, why didn't you bring this up before, you know, I'm at week 37 now and we're just making this decision, but I've been 40 and I've been black this whole pregnancy. So why did you bring this up? And she said, well, you know, Toni, this is new data. Like, yes, there's some of the research has been for the last couple years, but she's like, the presentation of this data is brand new. So I had mentioned the perinatal conference that I attended, and she's like, you know, I recently went to one of those too. She's like, this data is just coming from CDC. It's just coming from some of the local organizations, from the local hospitals, but it's not even a recommendation fully through like ACOG yet. And so her whole point was, you know, yes, we can be on cutting edge with technology and all that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to have that conversation with every patient. She said, especially you, like, you're healthy, you haven't had any issues in this pregnancy or the previous 2 pregnancies. So yes, you're 40. I've been treating you for years now and I've cared for you after the delivery of 2 of your babies, and you've healed fine, you've recovered fine, and you've had great pregnancies. So she really didn't think to have that conversation with me just because I was this special age. So I forgave her. Y'all know I be giving doctors a hard time. But you know what's interesting? Kelvin actually said something afterwards and he's like, you know what? I got to give you credit because you are not afraid to talk to your doctor. You're not afraid to ask questions. And the reason he said that is because during that appointment, she did a cervical swab because it was time for my GBS test. And we'll get to that in a second. And then she did an ultrasound, of course. And we still don't know the gender, y'all. So she covered everything up and she made sure we weren't looking when we weren't supposed to be. And then we just had basically like a Q&A. We always have these little sessions where she does her work. She tells me what her take aways are. She prints out the sonogram pics and then she asks, do you have any questions? And I always have questions. Y'all should always have questions. Don't ever just be like, oh no. Like, ask. If it's something that they mentioned and that you didn't get clarity on it, ask them to clarify. If it's something that didn't come up during the appointment and you had hoped to discuss it, ask your question. And it doesn't have to do with just being pregnant with your prenatals or your OB. I mean, every doctor, just ask questions. I emphasize this so much because it's really important to me, and I feel like we should be a part of our own health journey. And oftentimes people sort of just take the word of their doctors and they get referrals to other doctors and they just go, do what the doctors say, and they go get prescriptions from the pharmacy and they don't check the prescribing information, so they don't know, and again, they don't know to ask questions. I asked every doctor questions that I've ever had, any surgeon, like anybody who's involved in the process. I'll be sitting there about to get my epidural and I'll talk to the anesthesiologist like, let's talk about what you're about to do. Let's talk about where exactly you're going to be poking me. You know what I mean? Like, and of course I appreciate and I respect them and I know they know what they're doing, but I always want to just ask questions so I know what to expect and I know we're on the same page. I think I shared in one of my previous videos that one time I had gotten into a slight car accident and just hurt my toe. Minor accident, toe injury. I was breastfeeding, I think, Kennedy at the time. So this was a few years ago. And I went to urgent care and was able to get some treatment. I think I actually broke my pinky toe, and they had to do x-rays and all that good stuff. And they gave me a prescription when I left. The moment I started my car, the doctor ran out to the parking lot. And it's kind of weird seeing a doctor like waving his arms coming at you. You're scared, like, oh my gosh, what? Is there something he diagnosed that he didn't tell me that had nothing to do with this? And so he runs to my car and he's like, put your window down. And he tells me that he made a mistake. And he's like, you cannot take this medication. You told me you're breastfeeding, right? And I said, yes. He said, I'm so sorry. You cannot have this medication. It's contraindicated. I apologize. I have my nurse canceling it right now. So when you go to the pharmacy, it won't even be there. You cannot take this medication. So I was so grateful. He doesn't know. I would have asked anyway. At the pharmacy, I would have asked them to check their computer because I always do. And they have a whole record of contraindications. So I appreciated that he manned up and he told me he made a mistake before I even left the parking lot. The fact that I didn't pick up the prescription. This is not the first time this happened to me. This happened to me one time when I got a prescription for Cammy, my 2-year-old, where there was a medication the doctor prescribed that was contraindicated in babies that young. And so I always do my research. I actually went online and searched before we even picked up the prescription and found out that information. Then I called the pharmacy just to get their opinion on it, and they're like, oh no, it's definitely contraindicated. So then I called the doctor back like, yo, what's up? So you got to do what you got to do, in a professional way. I never go off on the doctor and cuss them out or nothing like that, but I will ask questions, and I certainly encourage you to do the same. So back to my OB appointment. The question that I had raised with my OB this time was, am I dilated? Which is a simple question. And she was like, oh, I don't know. And I was like, you did my cervical check already. And she said, oh no, I just did a quick GBS swab. I didn't feel your cervix. Because the cervix checks are so quick, I actually thought she did. And so I was wondering why she didn't tell me if I was dilated or what percentage I was effaced or anything like that. She didn't say anything. And so she thought that it wasn't time to do a cervix check. So I asked her to check her charts. I'm like, I'm 37 weeks pregnant. And she's like, no, you're 36 weeks. And I'm like, I'm 37 and a half actually. And she checked the chart and she's like, oh my gosh, I was supposed to do this last week. And I said, I know, but remember we had to reschedule and all that. And so that's fine. Can we do it today? And she's like, of course. So I had already put my legs down and everything, but I had to go back and get the quick check. And thankfully I wasn't dilated yet. So compared to my last pregnancies, I was already starting to dilate at 37 weeks, only like a 1.5, 2 centimeters. So very slightly, but I was already starting to open up. And so this time she checked and I was completely closed. So it's a good thing she checked, just so I can have that peace of mind knowing, I'm not dilating every moment. When you feel those contractions, that's how you know. And mine are still daily and it's still a couple times a day, but they're not close together. But I will say, she said that doesn't matter for me. She's like, that would matter with your first pregnancy. She's like, with this one being your third, you could dilate just like that and have the baby at home. So she's like, so if you start feeling these contractions and they're a little bit more frequent, so if you have a few within the same hour, just come to the hospital. Don't try to stay home. Don't think you're a pro because you've done this a couple times. Just come to the hospital. So I was like, okay, good to know. So as far as the answer to Kelvin's question, we are having the baby once I turn 39 weeks. So remember, my perinatalogist said you want to do it before week 40. Now my OB said, I completely agree, but we don't want to do it earlier than week 39. So they want us to precisely do it within the 39th week. And so at this point, we're planning for July 5th. So we shall see if that is actually the date. Again, the baby could come on its own naturally before that. But as of now, that's our plan, to go 2 more weeks, and then we'll have the baby sometime over that 4th of July weekend. So cannot wait. It's going to be my own version of fireworks for sure. Okay, and so I mentioned GBS, and I told you guys I would get back to it. So I talked in the previous video about what is Group B strep, and this was the day that I got tested for GBS. And with my first pregnancy, I was negative, no issues. With my second pregnancy, I was positive. I had to have a planned induction so that I could have antibiotics prior to delivery. And unfortunately, I'm in the same boat again. So I just got my results back 2 days ago, and I'm GBS positive again. It is not the end of the world. Please know it's not the end of the world if you're in the same boat as me. I've had both experiences, and the only difference is you need to get into the hospital to have your baby. And that's a part of the reason why my doctor was giving me that heads up. Like, you don't want to just be at home if your water breaks, because your baby's probably going to come really quickly. And now, knowing that I'm GBS positive, I need to have my body and the baby exposed to the antibiotics at least 4 hours before delivery. And so what happened last time was I came in the morning. I had the antibiotics immediately as soon as I got there. They started a drip, and 4 hours later, they gave me my second dose, and then they gave me the Pitocin at the same time. And then within like 2 hours, I had a baby. So it was a different experience than my first one, but the whole process for me took like 6 hours, just because I had to have that 4 hour window for the antibiotics. So that's gonna have to be the plan again this time. So it's always interesting when I have something new in my pregnancy, just because the other two are so similar. This time I'm actually 40, so I've got all these new things. So one of those new things is having to go get stress tests done. I think I mentioned in one of my previous videos, they call them non-stress tests, and I learned the reason why. So it's a fetal non-stress test. They sync you up to a machine, and they just monitor you for 20 minutes, and they want to see the baby's brain activity as well as the baby's heart rate. And the reason they call it a non-stress test is because back in the day when they did these stress tests, they would actually induce contractions to see how the baby responded, which to me is like crazy. Like, they would give the mom Pitocin so that she could have contractions and she's actually dilating, just so they can see how the baby responds. But they're like inducing labor just to get this stress test done. So it's almost counterintuitive. Now they call it a non-stress test because they're not putting any stress on your body. They're just monitoring. They have all this technology. Here's a quick video. Could you guys get an idea of what I'm talking about?
Got this side. And then I'm having you hold it again while I grab the other side. Okay. So I'll get my little schedule book. Yeah. Now,
so you should eat something or drink something cold right beforehand so that you can make sure the baby's awake and active, so that they can get a baseline first of the heart rate, and then they want to try to accelerate that heart rate just based on natural activity. So your body's natural contractions, like when you're pregnant, you just have contractions, especially at the end like this. So that's why you're on there for 20 minutes. They just want to see like how the baby's reacting to the cold water, how the baby's reacting to your contractions. And they want to see a spike in the heart rate, and then they want to see it come back down to baseline. And then they're also looking at your fluids. So I had to do an ultrasound on my last one. I had to do 2 this week. I had to go to the hospital twice this week to do these non-stress tests. So I didn't do the fluid test the first day because I had just come from my OB and she had already done an amniotic fluid test. And then the second day, which was 3 days later, I did do the fluid test. And so that's just an ultrasound, and they're checking your fluid levels. The baby makes their own fluid from their pee, from their kidneys. And so they want to make sure that you have a sufficient amount of baby's fluids as well as your own amniotic fluids that are surrounding the baby. And my levels were all great this week. While I was there, I made sure I registered. Remember I told you guys a couple videos ago that I forgot to pre-register. Now it is all online, so I was able to pre-register when I went over to the hospital for my non-stress test. So I did that in a matter of minutes and got an email the following day from the hospital saying, we received your information, we put everything into the system, we are just confirming that you are now pre-registered. So I was like, yay. If this is your first pregnancy, I would also recommend doing a hospital tour. If you're going over there for a stress test or just in general, a lot of hospitals do tours so that you can see all of the labor and delivery rooms, you can see the postpartum rooms. If they have a nursery, you can view that as well. And then you can just learn their protocols. You don't want to worry about logistics when you're like having a baby. So get it all out the way beforehand, take your tour. A lot of hospitals love doing it because they get to show off all their new technology or their updated wings or their private bedrooms or what have you. So I would highly recommend doing a tour. Another thing, if this is your first pregnancy, I would highly recommend taking classes. Our hospital offered all these free classes. I didn't do it this time because it's my third time around, but my first time around, I took advantage of every free class, just about. Me and Calvin went to the breastfeeding class. We went to the car seat installation class. We went to the first aid class. That one wasn't free. We actually had to pay for that one because we had to get certified, actually, which I highly, highly, highly recommend as well. It's a prudent decision to make, but it's also a scary decision to make because you are learning how to do like CPR on a newborn baby. But you learn the spots of the baby's chest where you're supposed to press, and you would think all this is intuitive, but it's not. And so it's really important to take the class, to get your credit, and then to get certified so that if you ever have an emergency at home and you're waiting on the ambulance to come or something like that, then you know what to do in the meantime. So the thought of it is scary, but I would say do it. Take that class, whether it's an AED or first aid class. We didn't do Lamaze, so I don't think it's that relevant anymore. I know back in the day, everybody took Lamaze classes and they were all he, and they were sitting with their partners in circles and all that. I don't know if they still do that anymore. I do know they offer some Lamaze classes, but my hospital had very limited courses because they don't get many registrants. And a part of the reason is that it's like not a thing. Like you don't have to do Lamaze during delivery. I've had 2 natural labors and didn't do Lamaze breathing with either one. So what happens, I will tell you, is that your doctor will immediately tell you when it's time to push. They're going to tell you how to push. And so they'll tell you to push naturally just to see what you do. And I think we all probably push wrong because you're not thinking like where the baby's coming from. You're just thinking, get this baby out of me. So you just bear down, you squeeze and you push. Not only did I push wrong, but I held my breath, and my doctor and my nurse was like, stop. So then they tell you, okay, you need to bear down on the baby, like putting your weight down from your abs. I mean, your abs are gone at this point, but you know where your abs used to be. But you're pushing not like you're peeing, you're pushing like you're doing number 2. You also are not holding your breath because you need to breathe or you'll pass out. And so I had to do the opposite of what I was doing, but it took literally like 1 or 2 tries and then I had it. So that was the method that I had to just use for the rest of the delivery, which again with Kennedy was like 2 days, and with Cameron it was 16 minutes. So I will say I forgot the technique when I had baby number 2 because I had gone through with the first time with Kennedy, and then 2 years had passed, almost 2 years, and I was back at it again, and they told me to push, and I did it wrong. I did it the wrong way. I squeezed the wrong way. I held my breath. And so these are things that you forget, like, because you're in the moment, and like I said, you're just thinking of getting the baby out of you. I mentioned the car seat class. That was pretty cool too. You can actually go to like a fire station and they'll do this for you, which is interesting because I had no idea until I went to this class and our instructor told us that. But you can pull up at a your local fire station and say, hey, I'm having a baby, I don't know what I'm doing with this car seat, and they'll actually install it for you and make sure that it's installed correctly. Not only did our instructor instruct the whole first aid AED course, but then because our class was so small, he actually went into the parking lot and installed the car seat for us, and he checked all the harnesses, and he just made sure that it was appropriately not only connected to the base but also the seat belts behind it as well. So yeah, that car seat double strapped in there, and it was tight. I'll be honest, the way we had it, it was very loose, and we thought that was normal, and he's like, absolutely not. Like, the car seat should not shift at all. So he was able to get it correctly with the harness, tighten it all the way perfectly, got it in there, and showed Calvin how to do it so that Calv was able to install our car seats from then on. So my lovelies, that's it for week 37. I'll have some additional fun videos of me and my girls doing a belly cast. I can't wait to show that. They can't wait. And I also am going to have a special guest. My beloved Kelvin is going to join me on one of the videos too, just to share some of his experiences about this pregnancy journey. So I'm too geeked to have him join me and have you guys meet him. He was in one of the first videos when I told him I was pregnant, back in video like number 1 or 2. So you got to go back and check that out. He's a character. I also had a request to do a pre-pregnancy clothing challenge. So if I have some time, I'll try to shoot that and post that one as well. So don't worry, I got quite a few more fun little videos coming up before Miss Toni's 40-year-old pregnancy journey comes to an end.